Hey guys, Zomfox here, and it's time to do the last USFL Dispersal Draft team recap video. We still have two XFL videos coming out later today to finish up the XFL side of things, but it's time to finish the USFL side by looking at the Michigan Panthers. The Panthers coming into this league is arguably the worst team from the USFL side. Even though they made the playoffs, they did so with a losing record, and they have a lot of holes in their team. So let's see what they did. We're going to start off with Adonis Alexander, safety from the New Orleans Breakers. He was tied for 8th in passes defended, but the bottom line is he's going to be a depth safety on this team. The fact is the Panthers drafted a couple other safeties that have a lot more higher upside, but it's always nice to get depth at the back end. Adonis Alexander is going to be a solid piece to have. He was part of a really, really good Breakers defense. So overall, I'm pretty much a fan of this pick. Definitely solid. Then we get to one of the few that actually make me skeptical as a Panthers fan. We drafted a Philadelphia Stars offensive lineman that is not one of the few guys that was considered really good. The Stars' offensive line was terrible. Maybe we're just hoping he's going to be solid depth. The fact is that the Stars had a really bad offensive line, but so did the Panthers. So even Stars' O lineman might honestly be an upgrade over what we had. But Jacob Burton is definitely a piece. Again, it's an offensive lineman. As I've said before, O line is the safest draft you pick you can get because as long as they pan out, you're going to boost every other position on offense just by getting a good O lineman. So I'm okay with it. Then we have Davis Cheek, quarterback from the Breakers. A pick I'm kind of skeptical at as well. There's a lot of quarterbacks that the Panthers could have drafted. It feels like this is the type of guy you get as a safe pick to not piss off anybody, in a sense that it's very, very evident the Panthers are banking on EJ Perry coming back. He did sign back, proving he does want to come back. It's just that he immediately got a contract with the Jaguars afterward due to the T-Law injury. So hopefully Perry is back. Because it feels like this is the type of guy you draft to say, hey, we got a backup QB, even though they have Danny Etling, but not a guy that you're going to get that's going to compete with EJ Perry for the job, like if you were to draft Troy Williams. There's definitely a lot of better quarterbacks than Davis Cheek that were available in the draft, but getting QB depth is always a good thing. It might not age well, but we'll see. Then we have the start of the more notable players with Matt Colburn the second. I've been very love-hate with this guy. I mean, in year one, it was clear he was part of that big four of the stars that got him to the title game. But then this past season, granted a bad O-line, he really wasn't that good. In fact, Case Cook is finished with more rushing yards than he did. He played in only 8 games, but that's still 8 games. His only notable stat was tied for 4th in rushing TDs. He failed to get 100 yards receiving, only had 1 receiving TD. I don't know. The Panthers have pretty much overhauled their running back room completely. Both Corbin was unprotected and Scott left, so the Panthers had to get a new running back room. I'm not a huge fan of Colburn over Corbin, even though I have my issues with Corbin. I think Corbin is a better running back than Colburn. Hopefully, I get proven wrong. But this is a decent pick, but I feel like it's just. I would have rather had Corbin probably. But maybe it is because of how bad the O line was with Philadelphia, but we'll see. Then we have the first massive move Corey Coleman, the all USFL receiver from this past season. Led the USFL in receiving yards, receptions, 7th in yards after catch, tied for 5th in receiving touchdowns, 8th in all-purpose yards, and 5th in scrimmage yards. He was a monster, 200 yards after catch, 669 receiving yards, over 50 receptions, 4 TDs, as well as doing a little bit of punt and kick returning. Fact is, this is a top 3 receiver in the UFL. It's pretty much Pearson, him, then probably Hakeem Butler would probably be the top 3. The bottom line is Coleman is one of the top 3 best receivers in the UFL. He was a massive, massive name to be available for a team. Panthers got a really good one drafting him. The Panthers, this is their best receiver. Lance Lenore was great in year 1. Joe Walker stepped up in year 2, but Coleman is going to be much better than either of those guys. So this is definitely a huge add for the Panthers. Then we have Gerard Fernandez, another really solid one. Linebacker for the Breakers, 8th in tackles. While that is the only notable stat, the only massively notable one, the fact is Fernandez is an excellent linebacker. 39 solo tackles is a really solid number. He has an interception, half a sack, and 3 TFLs. He's going to be good. He's going to be a huge help to this Panthers defense because we still don't know what's going to happen with Gidna. The fact is he's still kind of with Atlanta. So now that the season's over, we'll see what happens with him. But if Frank doesn't come back, we need another guy that can actually step up at linebacker. And getting a guy like Fernandez is going to help a lot with that. So this is a really good pick because either A, he ends up having to step up and be the linebacker 1, which he could do, or he comes back and is the linebacker 2 like he's been Devontae Diggs in New Orleans, and we still have Gidna. Really like this pick. Really safe, solid, good pick. Then we have Keith Gibson Jr., cornerback from the Maulers, tied for 7th in interceptions, tied for 3rd in passes defended. Yeah, this is a solid one. The Panthers are very much wanting to get that defense, up and running even more than it was last year. The fact is the Maulers defense was a really, really solid unit. It's the whole reason that team was able to really compete for a lot in some of the games they were. And even though T. Will did a lot in offense, the defense is what everyone looked at as, wow, this is a really good unit. A guy like Keith Gibson Jr. is a reason that it worked. This guy was a really solid cornerback for the team, and I'm glad we got him. Then we have Devin Gray, another Stars receiver. And this is not even the last one. Devin Gray was really solid, underappreciated this past year. The fact is, like I've always said, having two great wide receivers is a big deal because it creates a symbiotic relationship. This is proof of that. Devin Gray would have been the wide receiver 1. He would not have put up these stats. Because he was wide receiver 2, he was able to because nobody was actually covering him the way they are at Coleman. 500 receiving yards, 7th best in the league, 6th best at yards after catch, and tied for 2nd in receptions. Him and Coleman were an insane dual threat, and the fact that you're getting them both back together in Michigan, that's a big deal. This is going to be a really, really stacked receiving duo just with those two. And while I think the Battlehawks do have a better duo with the two guys they got, this is one of the best wide receiver duos in the league. Really, really solid addition. Then we have the big one, Wes Hills, all USFL running back, 1st in rushing yards, 2nd in rushing TDs, was tied for 4th in fumbles, but had 9th in receptions, 5th in all-purpose yards, and 1st in scrimmage yards. Yeah, this dude was really good. He had a lot of really good stats. 278 receiving yards to go with the 679 rushing. I've said it before, I do think Darius Victor is a better player than him. I stand by that. I think that the all-USFL nod went to Wes, primarily because while he did have more receiving yards, it's also because of the overall rush yards. But as you can see, he had 80 more attempts than Darius Victor did at 100. But Wes Hills is still a really elite running back. And I would argue the 3rd best in the UFL. Number 1, Thompson. Number 2, Victor. Number 3, Wes. I think that's an argument. I'm not going to say I fully stand by it, but it is an argument that I would be willing to make. The fact is that Wes is a great addition to the Panthers running back room. He is an immediate upgrade. I said in my what I want the Panthers to do in the first round of the USFL draft, I wanted them to get Darius Victor. I'm totally fine with this. Wes Hills is an awesome running back that is a massive upgrade over Corbin. Really solid pick. Then we have Drew Heimelman of the Philadelphia Stars. I mean, another O-lineman from the Stars. Kind of skeptical if this is going to work. I'm just going to move on. Shalem Luani. This is one of the 2 safeties I was alluding to earlier. Luani will be a day 1 starter. He was an all-USFL safety back in 2022. While he did have a slightly down year this past year, he still was solid. He was in the top 25 in tackles. He had 2 TFLs and an interception. Dude was a great safety. It's just this second year. The Generals' offense wasn't nearly as good as it was the year prior. The defense had to be on the field much more than it was. A lot of guys suffered a bit. Luani still was a really solid safety, just wasn't as dominant as he was in 22. Then another General, Brock Miller, punter. I really liked what the Panthers did because you'll see the very next pick as well. The Panthers did very much what the Maulers did as well. Or not the Maulers, the Stallions. They drafted this out of a position of need. They didn't have necessarily an unbelievable punter, and now they have one of the best in the game. Brock Miller, while being 5th in punt average, was tied for 2nd in the 20-yard percent and 8th in touchback percentage. Those are great numbers because that means that he is getting the ball punted in the 20-yard line almost the most in the entire league, and he's not punting it to the end zone to give them the ball at the 20 immediately. Really arguably the best in the league. There was like a couple guys that had a couple better averages, and he was still 4th in net average. Brock Miller is an elite punter. I'd say probably was the 3rd best punter this past season. Is a huge upgrade over the Panthers. Really like it. And they're bringing his long snapper with him. Yeah, Jordan Ober is going to the Panthers as well. This is directly a position or a draft pick of let's just make this work. Get the guy that's snapping to the punter we just drafted. That's a really smart move. I really like that pick. You could argue, hey, you could have used that on, a wide receiver, a running back, a D lineman or something. I think this is a really smart move. Winning the special teams battle is a huge deal. This is going to help him out in doing that a lot. Then we have Nasir Player, defensive end for the Pittsburgh Maulers. Very underappreciated. When you're talking about a defense that had so many great players on it, sometimes a guy like this just gets totally under the radar. You're talking about two awesome linebackers, Tizino and Foster. You're talking about two great defensive backs, Mark Gilbert, Bryce Tornadon. I mean, you're not really going to think of Nasir Player as a high-end player, but he was a really solid guy. 3.5 sacks, 3 TFLs, 28 tackles. Really solid addition to the Panthers D-line. Remember, the Panthers have Breland Speaks, who, pending how healthy and back Chris Odom is, you could argue is the number one defensive lineman. You got Harris, you've got Odom, and you've got Speaks. Those three guys are the elite pass rushers. So getting another guy to help Speaks out in that front, considering the fact that we saw what happened with Harris and Odom's teams, this is a really solid move. Then Ryan Pope, another offensive lineman from the Stars. He did actually play in the Stallions. He was part of their championship winning team in 22. I don't know. I'm still kind of skeptical on all these Stars offensive linemen, but we'll see how it works out. But we have another Stars wide receiver in Jordan Sewell. You'd think that for how many Stars they have drafted Case Cookus, but they didn't. But Jordan Sewell, solid receiver, 130 yards, is a great depth piece to have on a team. It's very evident that's what he's going to be on this team, but still another receiver is always welcome. Solid pick. Then Tristan Taylor, another offensive lineman for the Stars. Move on. Alex Thomas, cornerback from the Breakers. Solid pickup. Solid one. Really good quarterback, tied for 7th in interceptions, tied for 8th in pass defended, with those, two key stats of 2 interceptions and 6 pass defended, which almost everybody seemed to have. But still really solid cornerback, a great player on a great defense. Breakers defense, both in 22 and 23, statistically was the best unit in football or the USFL. Getting guys from it, solid additions. And then here's the other safety. Yeah, I alluded to him twice now. Bryce Tornadon is a Michigan Panther. 46 tackles, 1 TFL, 6 sack yards, 1 sack, 3 passes defended. He was the other all-USFL safety in 22. So yes, the Michigan Panthers now have both of the original all-USFL safeties on their team. If both these guys can go back to being in that form they were in 22, this is going to be a really scary back end. These two guys are going to be huge to have in the back. You're talking about 2 of the best safeties in the UFL are both in the Panthers. Really, really love this pick. And then the last guy is Terry Wright, wide receiver from the Stars. 142 yards, 13 receptions, 2 TDs. Again, another Stars receiver. So overall, the Panthers draft, it's a very weird one. They basically did the opposite of what most teams did, whereas most teams looked at the breakers and said, let's draft as many breakers as we can and then go on from there. The Panthers just decided to draft a bunch of Philadelphia Stars. They got pretty much the entire receiving core on their team now, and they got some of their offensive linemen. Now, is the O-line picks going to work out? I don't know. It's very, very risky instead of drafting some of the safer picks from guys like the Generals or the Breakers offensive line, instead going with the Stars O-linemen. But getting these wide receivers it's just very, very skeptical. I think that this is a draft that some people are overrating, and yeah, this hurts to say it as a Panthers fan, but I think people are overrating this draft a bit. Yes, the high-end talent was great. Corey Coleman, Wes Hills, the 2 safeties, great. But when you go below that, it's a bunch of questionable picks, I think. A lot of offensive linemen you maybe shouldn't have drafted or could have done better with. Maybe that's just me being really pessimistic, but we'll see. Overall, that'll do it. This has been Zom Fox. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. We still have the St. Louis Battlehawks and San Antonio Brahmas videos coming out later today, so be on the lookout for that. Have a great night.